Hi, storytellers. Welcome to the Storyteller Show podcast, season 2026. I can't believe it. We're already in season 2. Today, we are joined by Catherine Laudone. Catherine, could you share who you are and can you walk us through your career journey into publishing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be chatting with you today. I wear a lot of different hats. I'm a published children's book author. I co wrote the book She Kept Dancing, a story of a professional dancer with a limb difference. I co authored it with Sydney Mesher, who the book is about, and she was the first Radio City Rocket with a visual limb difference. And it's illustrated by Natel Queck, who did an amazing job with the art. And then for my day job, I'm also a senior editor at Beach Lane Books, which is an imprint of Simon and Schuster. As you can see, my entire life is children's books, and I'm not sorry about it. I grew up loving to write. I really loved writing, children's and young adult stories because those stories really had an impact on me. My mom started reading to us really young, and that love of reading grew and grew. And then when it was time to go to college, I assumed I'd go be an English teacher because that's what I thought you did if you loved books as much as I did. And then my AP English teacher in high school was like, well, someone has to make the books, right? And it was like a light bulb moment going off. So after that, I started looking at colleges that also had publishing programs. And that's where I found Emerson College because they had a great writing program as well as a publishing program. And I did a lot of internships while I was in school. I was fortunate that I lived close enough to the city. So when I was home on summer breaks, I would usually get a part time job and then I would also part time intern in the city. I interned at HarperCollins, Source Books, and a couple of agencies. I also did a mentorship while I was in school with one of the adult deputy publishers at Simon Schuster, which was a really great way to kind of get an inside look at that track. And so when it was time to apply for a job, she was able to give HR a heads up that I was applying, which was really appreciated. And I got my first job in 2013 as an editorial assistant at Simon Schuster Books for Young Readers. And I assisted the deputy publisher as well as a senior editor. And I was there for a number of years. And then I switched to the Paula Weissman Books group. And when Paula Weissman retired just a year ago, I switched over to the Beach Lane Books team. So I've been at Simon Schuster for over 13 years now, but I've been in several different imprint families, so it's been a really fun journey, and throughout it, I've had the opportunity to edit picture books, middle grade, and young adult, although right now I'm just doing picture books in middle grade.
What's it like working with a big five publisher, and how does that shape your day to day work as an editor?
Hey, storytellers! If you're still juggling Word docs, sticky notes, and 47 browser tabs to keep your story straight, it's time to simplify your writing life. Meet Scrivener, the writing software built by writers for writers. Whether you're drafting a novel, a picture book, or even a dissertation, Scrivener helps you organize your scenes, research, and revisions all in one beautifully structured workspace.
Many of our guests on the Storyteller Shelf podcast have raved about Scrivener and how it completely changed their writing flow. You can move chapters around with a click, store your notes right next to your draft, and even set word count goals that actually keep you motivated.
Curious? Check out our affiliate link. It helps support the show at no extra cost to you. And let us know if you give it a try. We'd love to hear how it helps your writing process.
That's a great question. I think I get the best of both worlds because working with a big five, you have all the resources that come with that, a full marketing team, publicity, design, and all that support, which is wonderful. But being on the Beach Lane team is a much smaller team. It's just our publisher, editor, director, myself, and then an associate editor and editorial assistant. And so as a result, it's really kind of nice that I get to grow my own list without worrying about my books competing with other books on the same list. Some houses imprints can have 20 editors in them and it's just very challenging to make sure your books are standing out among the other editors' work. I really love that I kind of get an intimate feel to my team, but have all that great big support behind me. And in terms of just my work in general, I think the fun part of editing is every day is different because every project is different. There's never one way that every project's going to turn out. And so I'm doing everything from reading submissions to going to, meetings and answering emails. People are surprised how many answering emails my job consists of. I think they just assume editors get to read all day, and that's not the case. And then working with design and copy editing and just reviewing passes and also giving feedback on illustrations that we're working on for picture books. And so every day is really a new exciting day for me because no day is the same as the previous one.
If you could give our listeners what your typical day looks like, acquisitions versus meetings, admin, all of what does that look like for you?
Terms of my day to day, I definitely start my day checking my email. I keep an old fashioned handwritten list for my to do list just to make sure I'm always on top of everything. And I really just kind of go through and whatever is high priority. For example, if I have to review a pass of interiors for a picture book that has to go out in a day or two, that has to be done as soon as possible so it could keep routing to the next person. So, for example, I might prioritize that over just a query. A lot of times when submissions are coming in, I'm quickly filing them into my reading folder to be looked at some other time because usually in the moment I'm doing something else, setting aside time for that, later on is important. And then oftentimes I also have meetings scheduled with authors and illustrators. Those are always the most fun for me because you get to just have FaceTime with the people you're working with to create this beautiful book. And I love brainstorming with the authors and illustrators to get that perfect combination of plot and character going. So that can be a lot of fun as well. We have certainly big weekly meetings or weekly meetings, like our production meeting where we're literally going through 2 to 3 seasons worth of books and basically updating on where we're at with them, along with production and managing ed and everything. So there's always someone keeping time for all the books, and that's usually the managing editor. So it's really great to have those meetings to kind of all come together, but it's definitely a lot of titles to get through in an hour. So that's always a lot of fun. And then in terms of acquisitions, it's so interesting because I've been at the company 13 years. I've seen so many different versions of acquisitions come through the door. When I first started, we had the acquisitions you've probably heard about where it's like a big meeting, head of publicity and marketing and ed library, and the president is there and everything. And I certainly did that for many, many years. But over the last few years, SNS kind of shifted their acquisitions a little bit where we're really only having those really big meetings if it's like an auction situation or a really high profile project that we feel like we need to bring in those other departments super early. And the reason why they did it is they kind of felt like too much discussion was less about how they'd sell the book and more about personal taste on some level. And so they kind of shifted their perspective to, you know what? We hired these editors because they know the market, they know what kids want. Let's trust the editors, let's trust the publishers. So all that said, while I don't have to go to a huge meeting all the time to acquire stuff, I still do have to, get buy-in from my editor, director, my publisher. So usually, if I really love something, I'll first share it for a second read with my editor, director. If she really loves it too, then she'll share it with the publisher. And if we get the green light from there, I can work with her to figure out what that offer will be. We still have to route a profit and loss statement and paperwork, to make sure that financially we're, we're still on budget. They didn't give us that much free rein. We still have to, show that we're going to be on budget. But that said, it's really nice because it streamlines the process and it's great because then when you're launching some of the projects for the first time in house, everyone's just super excited to see them and just really put everything behind them because it's the first time that they are truly hearing about a project, which is really exciting. So that's kind of how the acquisitions has worked. That said, sometimes there might be a project I'm bringing and my editor director doesn't love it or she has concerns about it. And usually, if I have a very clear vision of how I think something could get stronger, I'll say, let me try a revise and resubmit, which is when I go back and I give feedback to that author via their agent and ask if they'll try fixing some of the problems we're having with it. And there's never a guarantee that you'll still be acquired, but I'd say 99% of my list have all been R&Rs at some point. And I always tell agents and authors if you're asked for an R&R, do it. One, it can't hurt. And two, it means the editor really sees potential or they would not be spending their time giving you those notes. It would just be a form rejection. So even that part of the acquisitions where it takes a little longer to get there, it's so satisfying when you do get that yes to go forward. In a way, a lot of the editing's already done after you acquire it, so sometimes you can even push it out a little sooner.
So when a manuscript is acquired, can you walk us through the acquisition process a little more and what happens behind the scenes once you say yes as a publisher? How does that work for the author?
I've had the pleasure of experiencing it both as the editor and as the author who got the news, so I totally can, relate to authors wondering how that will feel if you haven't felt that yet. After something's been on the green light to be acquired, I make the offer to the agent if you're agented, and I have had, the occasional, where it might have been someone through a conference who was unagented, and in that case, I'm making it directly to the author, but usually it's to the agent because we take solicited by agents only. I'll make the offer, and usually the agent and I will go through a couple of rounds where they are negotiating on the author's behalf. Some agents I know will be sharing every single round with the author. Some agents will try to get a better deal and then share it with the author for review. It just depends on each agent's approach to it. In the end, we'll come to an agreement on things that we can compromise on, and then there's certain, deal points that we have to stick to just because either they're standard for our company or, contract says that this is something we just can't negotiate. We get the main deal points hammered out, and that's usually the advance or how much you're gonna get paid, the royalties, which is how much you'll get paid once you earn out your royalty, your advance, sub rights and, world rights, whether it's gonna be world or whether the author's gonna retain some of those rights. So kind of more the basics. Then we send all that contract paperwork off to contracts, and then the agent and the contracts team will continue to negotiate on more specific contract legalese. So that said, it can take a very long time sometimes, but then other times it can go really quickly, especially if we've worked with an agent before. Their agency will already have like almost a template with us, so we're not starting completely from scratch. So that said, you could have your contract signed in a month or it could be several months. So it can definitely go either way. But on my side as the editor, once it goes off to contracts, my fun part begins of actually working with you because the contracts actually can take a long time to be signed, and it can take 2 years for a picture book, 3 for a graphic novel, and 1 for a novel. Like there's no time to be lost to be working on the book. So we can't wait for the signed contract. But it's almost a verbal agreement, those emails saying, we've agreed we're not going to suddenly pull out, but we also need to get going on the book before we get signed on the dotted line. So usually then I'll jump in and start editing with the author. And if it's a picture book, sometimes when I am reviewing the submission, I'll automatically have an illustrator in mind, and I'll share that illustrator while I'm also trying to acquire the text with my team to get their thoughts. And then other times, I might have a sense of the style I want, but not the right illustrator. So while I'm working on the text, I'll be also combing through the different agency catalogs and Instagrams and find some different illustrator options. So the contracts team takes care of all the jargon, and I'm kind of jumping into action on the other side with the authors and illustrators. And also, I have to make a offer to illustrators as well. That usually falls on me, even if a designer has found the right person and we both like someone. I'm usually the one actually making the formal offer to their agent, which means more negotiations and back and forth. So really essentially for every picture book or graphic novel, I could be doing 2 contract negotiations for 1 book, unless it's an author illustrator, which is then it's a little easier. You get 1 contract and you're one and done. But again, it's the whole technical part of it is so worth it because then we get to the creative part, which is the best part in my opinion.
Okay, speaking of the best part, tell us a little bit more about what your editorial style is and what makes an author a joy to work with during the whole process.
It's a great question. So, in terms of my editorial approach, I'd say I go big picture and then slowly start to funnel down to more minute details. When I'm reviewing a first draft, I'm going to be looking more big picture. Is the narrative working? Is the character developed? Do they have a strong character arc? Is the plot high enough stakes? Is the hook high concept enough that it's going to stand out? I kind of give that feedback, and usually I'll kind of see what the author does with it. I always offer a Zoom call or some type of call after the first draft, especially if it's someone I've never worked with before, because I want them to have the opportunity to have a dialogue with me if they have any questions about the feedback or if they need to brainstorm a way to deal with it. But otherwise, I kind of always just say, these are just suggestions. Let me know what you think. Because sometimes I might suggest a way to fix it and they come up with a way that's 10 times better, but still is dealing with the issue I brought up. Ideally, with each round, you're going to have less and less big picture. I say problems, but like in a good way, problems, because you're working on getting it to be the strongest version of itself. And then it becomes about what I call polishing rounds, which is when I'm really getting into more nitty-gritty of, "Oh, let's try moving this line here for better flow. Okay, have you thought about this different word choice?" Sometimes that will creep in a little bit when I'm editing a novel, line edits, but I've learned to not get too hung up on some of that because a lot more of the grammar aspects are gonna be handled by the copy editor later on. And with picture books, it's a whole different process because I wanna get the text as tightened up as possible, but know that we're probably still gonna edit a couple sentences once we have the art alongside it. Because sometimes we might have a line explaining something, and then we see in the art, and now we can delete that line from the text. So, picture books, it's a little more loose, and sometimes I have worked with a few author illustrators where they have to be drawing while they're working on the text. Like I said, it's not a one-size-fit-all process, so in that case, I have to be flexible and be like, "Okay, we'll leave the text a little more fluid. Let's work on a first round of sketches, and then we'll bring in the art director to get a little more fine-tuned on it as well." So that's kind of my style is look at the big picture and then slowly start to get more finite in those details. Honestly, I think the best folks to work with are those who are just open to collaboration. I think the authors and illustrators who are willing to trust me and also bring their ideas to the table where again it's a dialogue and it's a working together to figure out the best solution. I never want an author to feel like it's a us them mentality, I'm very much on your side. I want to make this book a book you are proud of just as much as I will be proud of editing it. And also authors that are just transparent with communication. If you have a vacation coming up, you let me know pretty early so that we can work around it and not be afraid to shoot me an email and be like, "Hey, like I'm thinking this. What do you think?" Because often I feel like sometimes authors might feel intimidated to talk to their editor, and that's where I'm always happy to talk to your agent instead. But I also encourage authors like, I'm a human, I'm not gonna bite. You can totally email me a question and it's okay. And I usually try to leave on agents on all communication anyway, so that they're always in the loop as well. So I'd say the best folks are the ones who are open to making changes and seeing it more as a collaboration rather than, unwillingness to change what they already have.
Let me take us backwards for a second. Before we acquire anything, and you're going through that very, very, very full inbox full of submissions, and you finally find one, what makes you choose that one? And in contrast, what few qualities in a manuscript do you see and you know it's not for you?
For a novel, it's always voice. I mean, picture book as well, but especially in prose, having that narrative voice be super strong and immediately pull me into the story is so important because if I'm not being pulled in, a younger reader won't be pulled in. And then I think a high concept hook or stakes, especially right now, just because the marketplace is in a tough spot where it's just being harder to break out new projects, concept or a hook that will be an easy sell-in, saying this is who this person is for. This is this meets this, and it being really clear and cut that way. That's always really helpful. Having high stakes where it doesn't feel too slice of life is very important as well. Those are all things I'm looking for. And in terms of a picture book, if it's author illustrated, I'll confess I have to love the art. Like the art will immediately be the first thing I'm looking at because if I don't love the art style, I'm probably going to say no. Now, there have been a few cases where I loved the text because it was written by a separate person, but it was presented paired with someone's work. There was one instance recently where I said, I love this text, I love the topic it's on, but this art style won't work in the US market. It's too European. And she was a European artist. And in the end, it worked out that they got similar feedback. So they came back around, and that illustrator became a second author on the project so that she could still have that collaboration um, in the story and giving feedback on the art. But we were able to hire a different artist who would better fit the project. So I am always open to that. It kind of depends on how it's being submitted.
A little bit before, we talked about how competitive it is today in the market in general for kids' books. So, from your perspective, what makes a story truly memorable and likely to sell in the crowded publishing landscape?
I think everyone would agree if we knew what would make a book successful, we bottle it and just sell that instead of the books. Honestly, it really depends on the book and how the word of mouth gets out. I remember when Book Talk became really big a few summers ago, like all these books that were like really deep backlist for some of these publishers, like kind of became the new front list again and just were becoming bestsellers, and when they come out they were very modest sales. So some of it is a bit of luck, some of it is what catches fire with word of mouth or on TikTok and interest. Some of it is for the ed library market, what schools are looking for. Middle grade was really really big a while back. It's tougher because the kids post pandemic are at lower reading levels, so things have got to be shorter and a little easier to digest, and action packed seems to work a little better sometimes because it just holds the kids' interest in a different way. That said, there's always an exception. We still need, I say quieter, but like books that have kind of a slow build. And I think sometimes people say, oh, I don't want to be on the mid list because it just means I'm mediocre. That's not true. It means your books are selling year after year at a steady rate. You're making money, the publisher's making money. And frankly, without that steady mid list or even backlist titles, we wouldn't be able to buy front list. Don't get caught up in all those labels or people's opinions. If you have a book out and it's selling, that's a victory, It's a victory for everyone. So a lot of times it's finding that hook where it's going to be an easy sell-in for our sales reps, or sometimes our sales reps will tell us we're being asked for more of this type of book, and then we'll rise to that occasion. So again, it's always an open dialogue with sales among ourselves, and also just looking at what is selling and trying to find something that is appealing to what kids are clamoring for in the moment as well.
Before we wrap up, are there any upcoming titles or projects that we should be keeping an eye out for from you?
It's so hard. It's like asking someone what's your favorite movie or your favorite book. 'Cause I love all my book babies that are coming up with my awesome authors and illustrators. Let me see. Well, one author out there is Kaz Witness has a third book in the Bitsy Bat series coming out, Bitsy Bat Snow Star. That'll be coming out this fall. And it's so cute. Bitsy is experiencing her first snowfall at school, and she wants to try all of her friends' different activities. But, a lot of things aren't easy for her. She doesn't like being cold or wet. And so she has to kind of learn during the story that it's okay that if friends like different things and not to mask too much since she is coded autistic. But yeah, it's super cute, lots of fun, and I give Cass total props because when we were trying to decide what this third book should be about in the Bitsy series, I was like, "Oh, she'd be so cute in a snow outfit," and because like I hate snow, I was like, "Great, Bitsy can hate snow too." So it's a really fun story. I'm very excited about that. So coming up this summer will be Little Ghost Summerween by Maggie Edkins Willis. It's about a little ghost that we met in the first book in that series. Little Ghost makes a friend, and he wants to celebrate his birthday for the first time, and he wants to pick the perfect party theme, which of course for him would be Halloween, but you can't have Halloween in the summertime, or can you? So obviously it's playing on that really popular trend of Summerween, but it's a really fun friendship and birthday story. And of course, at the end, the greatest gift is your friends, and nothing else. So those are two very exciting titles. I can't give too much info yet, but my agent's currently negotiating a contract for a new project that I co-wrote. My co-author is Paralympian, so I'm very excited for that project to be coming. It's going to be a middle grade title, and so hopefully we'll see an announcement in a few weeks. And to my earlier point, it's taken a long time to get the contract figured out, but hopefully we'll be signing this week, which is very exciting. A lot of really fun stuff, both on the author side and the editor side coming up.
Well, congratulations, Rin, for all of your advice and your insights and everything you shared with our storytellers. We were so happy to have you on today. And if everybody's listening in now, please remember to give a like and a subscribe. Head to our website for freebies, events, and opportunities like awards and summits. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Storyteller Shelf podcast. If today's episode helped you, please subscribe and share it with a friend. In the link below, you can explore our educational library and learn about what's coming up next, including our live summits and the BB Notable Book Awards. We also publish a limited number of curated blog features for authors and publishers who want to spotlight a book we believe will truly serve young readers. And for companies and organizations that support kidlit creators, we offer ways to partner through sponsored episodes and select opportunities that are a strong fit for our audience. Until next time, keep writing your story.